I think, Becky, it's more like a long, tough haul, right? Because it's the beginning, it's the opening salvo of how we're going to get more private investment into infrastructure projects, how to think about it, how to prioritize. And it's a real question about productivity for the economy. We think there's a huge amount of potential locked up productivity in the economy, and the only way to really address it is through a pretty significant infrastructure build.
Ron, it used to be that it was a pretty bipartisan issue to start talking about infrastructure spending. How did we get to the point where this is going to turn into an absolute battle on both sides of the line?
Well, Becky, I think it is going to be a battle, but I think there could be a happy ending to it. I mean, I think we got here because President Trump promised during the campaign he'd have $1 trillion infrastructure plan. He'd do it in the first 100 days of his presidency. And as you just heard him say in that clip you played at the outset, he put a higher priority on the military buildup, on the tax cuts, and kind of left this for the end. We're out of money, so he proposes to reverse a 30-year commitment to federal leadership on infrastructure and dump it on the states, which are squeezed already, and particularly in the Northeast Corridor, where our gas taxes and our tolls are already high. Telling people we should pay through more gas taxes, more tolls, isn't really going to get the job done.
Although, if we end up doing this squabbling back and forth on both sides, it's going to mean that there is no money that is spent on this, and this problem just gets kicked down the road even further, and the situation becomes worse, right?
Well, I think one of the problems is in the president's budget, he actually proposes to cut as much infrastructure spending from existing programs as this bill would add to it. So, look, I think the good news is I do think people on both sides of the aisle on Capitol Hill, Democrats and Republicans, may well just throw this non-plan out and start and write a plan that is more consistent with the way this has been done in the past, more federal leadership. And I do think that this will be an impetus for folks on the Hill to get going on something else. I think this train isn't leaving the station, but another train very well might.
What do you think that plan would look like?
Look, I think that plan would look like something closer to 50-50, maybe even higher on the federal matching side, a little less tilted to the rural areas. This plan takes 25% of the money, puts it where 14% of Americans are, and a plan that probably would not gut the kinds of programs that the Trump budget does, which is a lot of cuts in mass transit, in Amtrak. I mean, it is a weird plan to say we're going to build up infrastructure, but start by cutting existing infrastructure programs.
Norm, do you think that sounds realistic? Do you think the president's plan sounds realistic? And by the way, how does that match up with how we've done traditionally? Hasn't it been like 80% from the federal government? So even if you get to 50%, you still have the president getting some of his way?
Yeah, in the old days, 1980, it was about 80% federal government, 20% states. But a better way to look at it, I think, is that 86% of our infrastructure is owned by states and municipalities. And so it's not wrong to say that states and municipalities have the problem, have to figure out how to address the problem. You know, I think with trillion-dollar deficits, you've got to figure out how to get private investment in infrastructure projects, and you've got to figure out how to help states make intelligent decisions about shedding assets. A lot of the stuff that they own, they don't necessarily need to own. A lot of the transit facilities, for instance, aren't necessarily state-owned assets. Everyone sees a huge opportunity there, including the riders.
Hey there, thanks for checking out CNBC on YouTube. Be sure to subscribe to stay up to date on all of the day's biggest stories. You can also click on any of the videos around me to watch the latest from CNBC. Thanks for watching.